listen to fall to the floor.
Hello, welcome back to another pen talk. Today we're going to be revisiting a subject I've covered a few times, but I try to do something a little different, and also this is a video tribute to this pen, which one of my viewers sent to me and asked me if I could restore a pen that his father used to own. So I said, yeah, let me give it a shot. And it's a Sheaffer Balance Ivory model. I've done a review on one similar to this that I got on eBay, but I wanted to show an as received video and discuss some of the things that I do when I first get a pen in. So my only concern on restoring this was whether I could remove the section easily, and thankfully the section came out relatively easily. Sometimes they're lacquered in or glued in, and that makes it a challenge. I've spent weeks soaking in, hot water and heat. Heat's not a good thing for me. I have some bad experiences from that. So this came out very easily. And the first thing I noticed right away was there's no residue from the sack on the end of the section here. So this pen someone has done some work on this pen. This is not something that's been laying at a desk for a while, because normally you would find that old sack here that I'd have to clean off, and you'd also find pieces of the old sack within the barrel, which there isn't. There was ink inside the barrel, which was unique, so I flushed this pen. It's just cleaned with water so far. The ivory is pretty dark, but it still has some nice appeal to it. If you don't compare it to the original version, it has its own kind of look to it, almost like a tortoise type of color instead of more of a whiter ivory. There's a decent amount of oxidation on the metal, but everything is in very good working order. So to me, that's the most important part with a vintage pen, is because I like to write with them, and the aesthetics are just part of that patina of age that shows up. I mean, there's a fair amount of wear on the plating material on the cap. Nice white dot here, and this is kind of the large oversized version. They may have made one larger than this. They made a whole bunch of different models in this Balance series from the 30s. Fairly clean imprint there. You can see most of the patent dates. You have a combination of sunlight and LED lights, which is going to work as well as can be expected on this material. There is a little bit of missing material at the bottom of the cap, but that is not really significant or noticeable. You notice it once the section's out, because you can feel a little bit of a sharpness there. So this is the as received. So I'm going to do my normal polishing. I've done videos on that and clean it up. I may use a little bit more paste than usual before I go to my polishing pads to kind of bring out the luster and remove as much tarnish as possible. So we'll next revisit this when it's ready to be assembled, and we'll do a writing example. This is a classic large Sheaffer nib of the period for this pen. As we try to get the camera to focus. One of the things that's nice, it does have the lifetime on the pen. It also has a unique serial number down at the bottom, which is typical. I'll do my research and try to date this pen just so we can give an idea of it. But I expect this to write with a really fine line. I'll do any tuning as necessary in case it needs just a little bit. Looks like those tines are pretty good aligned. This is a fairly substantial nib, fairly stiff nib, so you don't see a lot of these that require much work. I don't really disassemble it. I did put a bulb on here and flush it, and the flow is quite nice. There was only a little bit of ink that came out, so that was nice. I'm happy with how the pen cleaned up. I polished it with a couple different types of polish. Put on a number 19 sack, which fits fairly nicely in there. So, you're not going to get the color back, but it certainly looks nicer than it did when I received it. And with a nice coat of Renaissance wax, it's going to keep that look for a while. When I send this back to its owner, I'll send a polishing pad with it, so if there's any touch-up that's needed, that can be done. I'm going to let this dry for a little bit. I have my usual little bit of glue underneath of the sack as it on that nipple for the section. And then when it's fully dry in about 12 hours, I'm going to put some shellac on there that I think is going to be that one final thing to keep that sack in order, keep it nice and attached. The nib cleaned up extremely well, which I expected from these Sheaffer nibs. They're just bulletproof. They last a long time. And we'll do another quick look at the engravings, which came out nice. You know, there's a little bit of marks on this, but from a pen that's well over 80 years old, you would expect to find some of that. And from the wear that we saw originally on the plated metal parts, this pen has probably been used quite a bit. So next we'll take a look at this thing all put together and see how it writes. For the final assembly of the restored Sheaffer Ivory Balance, the sack is secure. A little coating of shellac there at where it meets the section. I think that's good. You know, everything's looking good. So we're going to talc it up, put it together, put some ink in it, and see how it writes. I always put it in just my style of the lever and the nibber together so you can watch the ink when you're filling it up. That fits just nice. I really like it. It's tight without being too tight. Everything fits together well. I just thought we'd give a quick compare to another one that I restored a little bit ago. As you can see, there's a slight difference in size. Not a lot, probably about 1/8 of an inch. Pretty much all along. This one has a name engraved on it, but a similar engraving on the barrel for the patent dates and everything. So these are probably made from the same time, probably about 1930. It has that classic hump clip with the ball at the end. So that's nice. Too bad there's no particular designations on it. I would say the smaller pen is actually older because it shows patent dates versus just patented on the larger one, the one that I've restored a number of months ago. So obviously there's only one ink because that's my ink, my go-to ink now. So we're going to put Lake of Fire from Robert Oster in here. Those of you that are familiar with Seth's videos, he talks about the first inking. So this is the first inking after the pen's been restored. We'll insert it in just above the nib. We'll listen for the burbles. Well, I see bubbles. And we'll do, you know, our usual 2 fills. I'm going to empty it before I send it back to the owner, so we'll just see how that works. So we're going to wipe it up and put nib to paper. You're right. The pen fits well in the hand without posting. The section is small, but you can hold it anywhere. The threads you don't really feel. With that large nib, the section is probably right in that right spot for most people to use. It posts pretty well, very secure. And to quote the name Balance, it does feel fine in the hand posted. In fact, this is probably a pen I would use posted. It writes smooth. consistent flow. It's exactly what I would expect from this nib from Sheaffer. And again, this Lake of Fire ink is really looks good. You know, not much to say about the nib. It's extremely stiff. These are the nibs that were designed to go work with carbon paper. I would date this pen from 1930 to 1934, primarily because of the clip. Later pens had a straighter clip, didn't have a hump in it, and the ball was flattened on one side and just rounded on the side against the cap. So that's the easiest way to date them. And also this color I don't think was used much past the mid-30s. You know, I think this pen cleaned up and restored about as well as you can expect from this material. Be interesting to find something that was mint that hadn't aged. You know, probably the color here was more indicative of what the pen looked like, or that color there, you know, and it kind of discolored as it aged. So hopefully the new owner of this pen the owner of this pen that asked it to be restored, hopefully they enjoy it. So thank you for watching. May you have many good writing experiences, experience pens, both vintage and modern, inks and paper. Put your thoughts permanently on a piece of paper. Until later, bye.